We'll get started now. Hi, my name is Ken Sutha. You see him pronouns. I'm a middle-aged Asian man, a bald Asian man wearing a blue speckled button-down shirt and blue pants and a rainbow lanyard, my ID. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today in person and over Zoom. I'm the co-chair of the Stanford Medicine Alliance for Disability, Inclusion, and Equity, and we're holding this event today, this screening and discussion of the documentary film Holding Moses in honor of October being National Disability Employment Awareness Month. We're very happy to have you all here with us and to be co-hosting this event along with the Pride and Allies Employee Resource Group at Stanford Healthcare, as well as the Working Parents Employee Resource Group. We felt that this event and the topics that are brought up by this outstanding documentary film really addressed things at the intersection of all of our three groups. And so it was a great opportunity to bring us all together in collaboration. We are just sorting out a couple technical difficulties from our streaming, but let me just double check to make sure that that is set or not. If not, I might have our panelists come and introduce themselves real quickly. Okay, we still have a couple of minutes to go on the technical issues. So if our panelists might sit here for a moment, and then we can just go down the line and just introduce yourself. And then once we have the film ready, we can stream that over the Zoom. There you go.
Hi, thank you so much for having us here. And I also want to just thank the National Institutes of Healthcare Management. We are here through a grant that they provided to Holding Moses to bring the film around to medical schools. And I also want to thank Julie Sandler, who is currently solving the technical problems. And it sounds like everything will be ready in a few minutes. My name is Rivkah, Beth Medow. I'm the director of this film. My co-director, Jen Rainin, isn't here. I'm wearing a red sweater and blue jeans. I have dark hair. I'm a middle-aged woman, cisgendered, and I'm not wearing my glasses, so I can't see everyone. But typically I have big red glasses that I'll have on later. Okay.
Hi, everybody. I'm Randy Rader, the subject in Holding Moses here. I am a middle-aged, masculine presenting female-bodied person, wearing a blue button-down with a kind of tan shirt jacket over that and some gray jeans.
Hey, everyone. My name is David Mauser. I use he, him pronouns. I am a physician here at Lucile Packard Children's Hospital and Stanford School of Medicine in the Division of Quality of Life at Pediatric Palliative Care. And so I take care of kids with severe illness. And my whole goal is to try and understand what brings them joy and meaning into their lives to help their parents make the really hard decisions that might come up in their futures. I am a 6 foot middle-aged white man with a beard, brown hair, glasses, and I have a gray button-down shirt on and a lanyard that has a lot of pins because I have a lot of elements of flair, like my Black Lives Matter pins and my Protect Trans Kids pin and my Quality of Life for All pin, which is the name of our team, and it's a koala theme.
Great. Great to meet all of you. Sounds like we have our technical difficulties cleared up, so we will go ahead and start with the streaming of the film. It's about 16, 17 minutes, so we'll rejoin you all here once that's done. All right, see you soon. Enjoy the film.
A newborn should cry and start breathing calmly. Moses was laboring too hard. His belly was pumping to try to get air. And he could barely cry, and he couldn't move, and he couldn't open his eyes. And I would just watch him, and I would just wait for him to snap out of it. I was like, is this gonna be the day you open your eyes? And he just lied there, and he was so still, and he was so beautiful. I had no idea what I was in for. Stomp is a show where people use body percussion and everyday instruments to make music together. One thing I knew when I got into Stomp was that I had no idea how the hell I was ever going to perform the show, because I couldn't even understand those rhythms that they were doing. And I was like, when are they gonna kick me out? The next day I would come in, and everything we had learned the day before was somehow there. There was a trust that happened. I couldn't see out of my eyes and I couldn't hear out of my ears, but I could do the rhythms that were given to me.
You make such a cute face when you do it, though. Come on, one more time. Just follow me.
I always knew I wanted to have kids. I just wanted that experience pretty desperately from like an early age.
Yeah, and then that again. Yes! And then just...
My ex had my oldest daughter, Tavi.
Do a clap, clap, then you do like that rhythm thingy, then you clap 2 times.
I'm just gonna tuck you in, and I'll keep checking on you.
And it went really well.
I love you too, I love you too, I love you too.
And I thought, I'm ready to do this.
In the morning.
The midwife came over and turkey baster style pushed some sperm into me, and I got pregnant the very first time. It was a good birth. I was so excited, and the doctor was so moved. I don't know that she had seen a lot of queer families. Felt like we did it. Now we have our family. I thought there was one kind of disabled child, and that was a Down syndrome child. I had no idea the spectrum of disability that exists. Moses has a rare genetic disorder called Phelan-McDermid Syndrome. Essentially, he's missing a chunk of his 22nd chromosome in all of his cells.
I know. So exciting.
All of his physical systems, his intellectual systems, everything is completely compromised.
Press and then clamp at the end.
Now, given that severity, he is remarkably present.
Where's Moses? Moses, where are you? Oh my goodness, there you are. There you are. Oh my.
And he's connected, and he looks at you, and he knows you, and he recognizes you. His disposition is extremely sweet.
More Superman. More Superman.
He's just a little kid that likes to be mischievous and get in trouble and play and laugh. It's just a matter of letting go of the child that you always think you're gonna have.
I know, but we're not gonna go outside right now, okay? I'll get you some food.
It felt very much like I lost a child, that he had died.
Let's go around.
Yet, I was still there with a child that I didn't understand. I've never felt so desperate before. They needed to go get some more sperm and impregnate me, and I needed to do it over. It feels like such a heavy, heavy burden that I did not know how to hold, and I felt ill-equipped to handle. I felt like I was losing my independence and my ability to be the person that I wanted to be in the world. It was shocking, because in the throes of being given the greatest gift of life, which is like birthing a child from your body, but instead I was given the hardest thing that I'd ever been given. I felt like I lost everything. I wanted him to die. And I wanted him to die quickly. And I didn't want it to hurt. So when I was 22, I went to Japan to a farm called Body Weather. this teacher of Buto dance named Min Tanaka. He would work our asses off all day on the farm. And then around 5 o'clock, he would invite us to the stage. Farm all day, you are tired, you are raw. That was the point. You don't have your capacities to say no. So your willingness, your heart, your body opens so much more. And Min would just say over and over, stretch farther. Really acutely for the first 2 years, I think I cried for hours every day. But then I started to resource people who also had disabled children. Hear about their children, and they sounded so cute and sweet, and they had lives. They were talking about school, the spring break, what are we gonna do? It's why aren't they saying, I'm devastated that I have been given this child? I don't know how to love my kid and I'm scared, And they would just look at me and they'd shake their heads and they'd be like, we know, we know. I think time handles the grief for you as you withstand it. Then I got together with this one woman who had a profoundly disabled son. His name is Joaquin. And her husband came. And Joaquin was in a wheelchair. And they got him onto the trampoline and he couldn't sit up. His dad got on the trampoline with him. And then I watched Joaquin just hold his dad's face in his hands, and his dad was accepting that love as enough. And I was like, oh my God, that is the most beautiful thing I've ever seen.
Okay, fly. Now fly, please, fly. Arms out, legs out. Uh-oh. And I got you.
Moses hugs with complete abandon. He just pushes his way to the essence of my being. It's overwhelming, especially when it's coming from a child who appears to be missing so much. After Moses was born, I waited 4 years to have another child.
You dancing already? And poop that and that.
I needed to wait until I didn't feel like I needed to do anything over.
Whoa, whoa, you okay, Cash? Oh, you just landed right on the hard thing. Let's brush you off. All right, dance it out, dance it out. Dance it out.
My time dancing prepared me perfectly to connect with Moses. This kid that I had to learn how to love so fluidly and with such ease.
wait a minute. Again.
He, in fact, was really my teacher of how to love him because he did it from day one, just with his complete and total self.
There's a boy named Moses. I know him just so well. He likes to play guitar sometimes, and he plays it so well. Moses, Moses.
He hasn't changed at all. I'm the one that had to change.
We'll just have our panelists rejoin us in the front. I'm joined here by my co-chair of SMATI, Dr. Peter Poulos. Would you like to?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that film with us and for being with us here today. I'd like to start out first by asking Rivkah and Randy just a little bit about the process of how this film came into being, how you first became comfortable with sharing your story and being so open and vulnerable, and then how that ended up translating into this film.
You start. Okay. Also, just thank you. I'm sorry it looked so pixelated here. I understand there was a Wi-Fi issue. It's typically not so pixelated. So, yeah, I heard it looked good on Zoom, but yeah, so maybe something with the relays. You can see it on the New Yorker, less pixelated. And so this film, first of all, Randy is my partner. And so what you hear is taken from an audio interview that we did in 2020, right as the world was closing down around the pandemic time. And I was going through a really deep grief that I knew would last for a little while. And I wanted to understand how Randy had navigated her shift in attitude with Moses. A lot of time we call it her journey of ableism, right? Because I knew that she had, when I met Moses, I mean, he was what, 5 maybe? And he's 11 now. And I didn't understand that when he was born, Randy had a hard time, right? So I wanted to understand like everything that happened in her life. I was like, let's talk. So I recorded an audio interview for about 3 hours and really started with you as a kid, right? Because I think that there are things that in our lives that we resource when things that are harder for us happen in the future. So why did you say yes, Randy?
I don't think I knew it was going to be a film or a film like this at the beginning. And I was like, why are you asking me questions about my childhood? Like, I wasn't sure how that was going to come together. And I really enjoyed the process of being seen by someone I loved. And so I forgot for a minute that we were recording, and it went on for 3 hours. I don't know if you said that part. Yeah. And so I just, at some point, was able to really let go and just be present with Rivkah and talk from my heart. No one had ever asked me from start to finish what happened, and especially not so many years later. So it was such an opportunity for me to like tell my story. No one wants to hear it really. And And again, like I had no idea it would become something that would just give me so much, even now. And also so many other people too. So that I don't think I even fathomed how much of a healing it would be for me and for others at the time.
Thank you for that. David, as a pediatrician specializing in quality of life and palliative care, what are your first kind of emotions that come to you and thoughts after seeing that film, after hearing about Randy and her and Moses' journey?
Yeah, just thank you so much for sharing your story and capturing her story. It's really beautiful. Grief is something that I deal with every single day in my clinical practice. And what I thought was just so beautifully articulated is how that is not just grief of a loss of life, but a grief of a loss of anything. And that for so many of the parents that I help take care of, because we don't just take care of the child, we take care of the parents as well. We help them understand and process what griefs they're feeling now, what griefs they're anticipating for later, and help just be of a supportive presence as they walk through their own grief journey, because it's so unique and it's so individual for everybody. But that first grief is so much always a loss of the expectation of parenting that you come in with, and that was first grief, and the learning to love him as he always just loved unconditionally, which is just, it just really resonates with the families that I take care of. The other things, the little things of how he showed times where he's uncomfortable or wanting his way, and times when he showed his joy and his happiness and his love, and how you over the years just learned to read that and learn that and know that. And as a reminder to us in the medical field that the parents really do know their child best, and they know them when they're not in the hospital, when they're not sick, when they're living their best life. And that's the kind of child that we need to get to understand.
One of the parts that really struck me and really the most, and what made me think about engaging with Dr. Mauser to come and join this panel as well, was the part where you talked about potentially even having thoughts that you wanted him to die, and vocalizing those difficult and often taboo thoughts that people may encounter when dealing with these difficult situations. I wonder if you might be able to talk about how you were able to open up about that, and what kind of reception you've gotten from other parents, folks in the disability community.
Yeah. We call those the hard words. I think it's rightly so. I struggle with those words every time and in different ways. It's not always the same for me. I'm struggling now because I'm just terrified that Moses might die, which is so ironic. So those words are intolerable, but also I struggle to care for him every day too. And it doesn't make me feel like I want him not here. Sometimes I just want it to be easier. And I think that's what I was saying in those words, and not the right way, but I was saying that I wanted that pain to stop. And now it's not so much pain of his diagnosis, it's just literally the struggle of every day and the grueling, like not getting a break when I need it. But as far as the reception from other families and people and the disability community, it's been mixed. I think it's mostly been really, really well received as far as people saying like, thank you for saying something that I felt before. And then the idea that like, we don't get to actually get through something if we're not willing to step through it. Right. And so sometimes we have to deal with some hard thoughts in order to get to the other side. And that's been true for me. And I think it's been true for other families. Mostly, I think the disability, I don't know if you want to speak to this more, but yeah, I mean, I think the disability community, it's harder. I've mostly, this is a caregiver story, and I mostly connect with caregivers more than I do so, I think, with disabled people because I'm a caregiver of one, right? So I think it's tricky. And for me, my journey in the film is about learning about my ableism, like Rivkah mentioned. And so I had to really come to terms with that. I didn't even know what that term meant before. And even after I had Moses, I didn't know what it meant. And so I think I've learned some things from the disability community, the ways to talk, what's okay to say. And I still am learning. I'm still on that journey now, but I don't know that, we did it perfectly.
One of the main reasons that I make films is to have conversations that I really want to have, and I love learning, right? So this film has created spaces where we can have really honest, difficult dialogues. I have a couple very close friends who have disabilities, and we've had some really honest, beautiful conversations. Learned a lot about the historic devaluing of people with disabilities bodies, right? That's something that we grappled with, and we were in deep conversation with other filmmakers with disabilities, communities of caregivers, queer families, around like how do we reflect Randy's experience honestly, and also open a space where people can enter where they are on their journeys of ableism. So I'll give just because I think this is such an important conversation to be able to have. It's vulnerable. You want to have it in a safe space where, I heard you say like, you've learned what it's okay to say, right? And it's true, but also like, how do we understand the history? How do we understand each other's experiences, and then really join in the, I guess, not, I guess the holding of those experiences and the valuing them as much as our own experience in the world, right? So there was an experience that we had in New York. Often it's a space like this, and there was a father of a child. He was there. He was kind of positioned right in the front, definitely neurodiverse himself, and he was angry that Randy had said those words. And there were two younger women who he said, that was his first question. He was like, I can't believe you felt like that. I've never felt like that. He's like, had a cane. He was slamming on the ground and he was furious. It was kind of amazing moment that there were two women who happened to be there, younger Gen Z women. They stood up. They were like very fiery. They were like, this isn't your space to say that, that was her experience. And it was kind of like, whoa, let's bring it down. There's space enough for everybody's experience here. And it ended up being one of my favorite screenings. It was at Positive Exposure. Rick Giudotti, you might know him, right? Fantastic human. And we met him at the Mobius Syndrome conference several years ago. But, I just bring that up as an example of like, we all came into the same conversation there, and we could hold, Randy's experience and this gentleman's experience, and we could say, not everyone's having the same experience, and let's talk about it.
Yeah, I think that's super important that you're opening up the space for the conversation and acknowledging that yours isn't the only perspective. It's just one perspective of the whole picture. and trying to like, how can we access the experiences of disability, people with lived experiences with people with disabilities, what's Moses' viewpoint and experience in all this. But I think that the important thing was like acknowledging the difficult times, like you said, like in the fact that we can be disappointed about things that we don't have access to related to our disabilities.
I mean, we're also talking about, I so appreciated what you were saying, David. I mean, listening to your approach to caregiving the families as well, and really respecting that they know the child and that it's a system that you're treating is a newer experience. I think that, that's what we're hearing. We're hearing a lot from different families and parents. And it's such a beautiful way. We talk a lot about if the world were built differently and more inclusively, then we would probably have, Randy might have had a different experience.
Yeah, I think, I often think about Moses, and he doesn't seem to mind his state of being. He seems pretty good, except when he doesn't get to go outside as much as he wants if it's raining or something. And so I realize that like it's me. It's so obvious. And so and then right. So I think what Rivkah was alluding to is if our culture were such that, there were the kind of resources, I think the kind of caregiving you're doing and that sort of cultural support, it might feel like a really different life for me. There's not so much of that. And so I feel like I'm constantly pushing that ball uphill, but I don't think it has to be that way.
And just to tack onto that, from the healthcare system perspective that we live in, that's just truly not built for children with disabilities. When I take care of a kid in the hospital, one parent, maybe two parents, at least one is working. There are other children to take care of. There is so much. The world doesn't stop when your child gets sick or has a disability. And the supports that exist out there are all philanthropy based. They're not from the system because our system doesn't support this very well. So we're very lucky here in the Bay Area. We have, a place like the George Mark House who can provide respite for caregivers of children with either complex illnesses or disabilities. And even just that one little provision can make such a difference in our parents' lives, because the last thing that gets attended to are the parents, because they're always attending to somebody else.
What are some other gaps in this system? Like what would this have looked like for Randy if she and Moses were in a society that was actively, awesomely anti-ableist?
I think home nurses would get paid a living wage.
I mean, I live that every single day. Like Rivkah knows, it's on the drive here. There were several calls I got from potential caregivers because I can't keep caregivers because there's not enough funding. And so I lived that for the past 11 years. Another one was when Moses was born, I had no idea what was going on. I really didn't. I didn't understand why he was in the NICU. I didn't understand, but I felt as if all the nurses knew something and I didn't. And they were just doing testing and testing. But I felt if this were to happen over again, that I would have appreciated, a system that was more transparent from an earlier time and sat me down and said, hey, this is the universe we're likely in. And here's what that universe looks like. Even after we got home we were in the hospital for 5 weeks in the NICU when he was born, and we got home, there would be this person. She would show up at the house, and I don't know what she was doing there. And she'd come, Erin Birkencutter was her name. And she would show up like every 5 weeks and would be like, Erin's here again. we're like, what do you do exactly? I mean, it's just such a world, and it takes so many years. And I'm in a support group for parents of special needs kids, and I'm an attorney, right? And so I can have a lot of like access to support when things don't go well at school, and I know how to navigate that, but most people don't. And to have those types of resources as well for IEP support, all these things, it's such a struggle on every front. The business of having a child with disabilities is a full-time job. Then there's the full-time job of caring for the child, and there's your actual job, and then there's your life. It's a lot.
Sort of a community perspective, some of what I see also, I see Moses in school, and there's some schools where he's been where other students come into the classroom where the medically fragile or kids with disabilities are, and there's a demystifying of that, right? Instead of just a separation. And I think that's really important. I have two daughters, and one of them in one of her schools, joined a circle of care, where that's what they called it, where she would have lunch with a middle school girl who had a disability, and just really like creating. I mean, kids are curious, right? And a lot of times, what we see with parents is they're like, their curiosity gets stifled or pushed down, or like, don't stare, right? Like, that's rude. Like, don't, it's sort of like, don't be curious. Like, it's, you get the message, a lot of kids get the message early on, like rude, like not okay. But, what if culturally we could hold disability differently as like just, really difference with, some just more curiosity. And it's a complicated space, right? Everybody's got a different experience. But I think that demystification has been something I've appreciated in my life, my daughter's life, and what I watch like with Moses's friends.
Oh, I want to acknowledge that there are some questions in the chat. We started a few minutes late, so if it's okay with you all, we might extend a little bit past the 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock end time, maybe to like 7:10. That's okay. But first, I wanted to ask about your experience being in LGBTQ family making, and what the extra hurdles that we face as LGBTQ folks in creating families, and like when there were challenges, and after Moses was born, how you felt about that in relation to the challenges you've faced in forming your family.
Yeah, good one. I'll say what I often say to this question, and then I want to add something I never say. The first part is that, is more obvious. So, it's hard to create a family when, there's two female-bodied people. And so there's a lot we go through to get that to happen. Money, time, resources, it's a lot. And doing just that feels like you're going over a hurdle, big one. And then once you have a child, like that's when you think you're done with all the hard. And then now to have another one, there's some shame I carried because I was like, oh no, I wanted to show that like we could do it too. See? And now I have this thing that maybe people will think that there's something wrong with me. And I had guilt for that. Another thing is, that I deal with now often, and I've dealt with it all along after having Moses, is that the people that come into my life as caregivers mostly, I get worried. Oh, do I need to tell them I'm queer on the phone? Are they going to get there and then say this job isn't for me? And oftentimes I'd have caregivers that were really religious, and they would come and they would say, we love all people, love hate the sin, love this, whatever that thing is. And so, but those people were some of the most important people in my life. And still, even now, the caregivers I have that are really religious, they teach me so much. There was one in particular, her name was Chama, and she was Moses's first caregiver when he was really a baby. And she came in and she would tell me stories about how her father would go, he was a missionary, he would knock on doors. Disabled sister who had since passed, and she felt that her family taught her that they were lucky to have had her as her sister, and that we were lucky to have Moses. And I watched her love him so much, and she literally was the first person that taught me how to love him, and it was by watching her care for him. And so in some ways it's like the disability piece has like overcome some bridges that I've found challenging in my queerness in the world with people I wouldn't necessarily be close to. And that's been a gift.
It's so it's so amazing to hear you speak like that, because as a provider who's part of the queer community, I have so many patients who are very, very religious, and it has been a journey to understanding them, and realizing that it's their narrative that I have to uplift. And so if that narrative involves God in whatever form, then I am now comfortable talking about that. And some of the most meaningful interactions are centered around God, because that is the lens in which they're seeing their child and giving their child everything and that that they need, and that amount of incredibly deep love. The other thing that the literature will share is that LGBTQ plus folks are at a much higher risk for disenfranchised grief. I know we're in Northern California, there's a lot of openness, but there are many parts of this country still where people are not able to experience the loss of their child, or of the loss of the expected life of their child, because they are not seen as the parent. They weren't the birthing parent. They're the partner of somebody. And then everything you said about all the work that it takes to get into that, only then to not be valued as a caregiver, a decision maker, a parent.
I watched this interview, or I guess it was a little panel you guys did in Kansas City a few weeks ago. Rare, the Global Genes. Yeah, that was amazing. And you said something that really resonated with me when Randy, you described Moses challenging, but also the richest part of your life, and how it's changed you completely. And you said, I wouldn't change it, even though I don't know I would choose it. And that's a nuance worth speaking to. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Wow.
Yeah.
That is good.
How I roll.
This is amazing. Yeah. I mean, this is like new for me, because I'm in, I'm almost 50, but it seems like every few decades I'm like, who am I and what do I want to be when I grow up, right? And so I'm here again and making this film with Rivkah and being a part of this journey and moving into medical spaces now has been a big goal for us. And I am finding that like purpose is surprising. I did never thought that the hardest thing that I ever experienced would then become the thing I want to keep doing more of. And so that's, I think, what I meant by that statement. Like, it's often, if we let it be, it's often, are you guys okay right now? Okay. If I find that like, it's often it can become the richest part of your life, because I mean, really, it's taking up most of my time. Like most of my time is spent thinking about, planning for, literally having two hands on this child, worrying about his health, thinking about what am I going to do, grieving a hospitalization or whatnot. But if I keep pushing away from that, and saying that's not really my life, my real life is over here, then I start feeling not integrated. And so I had to sort of internally turn toward the pain in order to start feeling whole, if that makes sense. And so once I do that, and when I do that, I just start feeling like I'm in that flow, and there's more purpose, there's more meaning. And I tell Moses this now. I actually can tell him and I can thank him. And it's a much better exchange. And I don't know what we're doing here if not to deal with our pain in ways that matter to us and make us feel more integrated. Yeah.
Yeah, that definitely resonates with me. I feel like the things that have been challenging to me in my health and whatnot, I don't wish on anybody else. But at the same time, I've learned so much from them and have made me who I am. The struggles and the things that I've learned about myself. So yeah, we have a lot of great questions in the chat, and we have lots of people here in the room as well. I'll start out with one here. We have medical folks here, including some trainees. One question is, what can we do to improve the training for providers to better understand the needs and support caregivers?
I think as much as a trainee that you can get access to parents who have lived an experience of having a child with disability or illness. And I say both because, of course, not all people with disability are my patients, but all of my patients have some level of disability. The parents are our greatest teachers. Some of the best panels that I go to when I go to national palliative care conferences are the bereaved parent panels. We just had one a couple weeks ago when we hosted a conference here, and I learned something new from them every single time. Part of my palliative care training was to have a longitudinal parent mentor that I would meet with every few months along the developmental milestones of my training. And it's really invaluable. I did not grow up in a family that experienced visible disabilities, and this was a new endeavor for me going into medicine. And it's not part of my lived experience, but as we talked about, you have to have that curiosity, that humble, I would say humble curiosity, so that you are always centering the person across from you in the narrative, but still able to learn enough to be able to take the best care of them that you can.
Yeah, I often say when I think about practitioners, doctors, I think to myself, this is their job, this is my life. And that's a big distinction. They can go home and often I'm sure they take it with them. But for me, it's like there's never a turn off button. And so I've become so fierce because of that, because I have, I'm the one that has to do it. And I think it gets at what you were saying a second ago about not, it's a rich part of my life, but I wouldn't choose it. And because of that, I don't get to go away from it ever. And I think practitioners who are coming toward, like you are, that's incredible. And we do have a lot to share with each other because, I'm on those front lines, and you guys are as well in most ways.
Thank you. I love that question. And one of the things that I like to say is that this is, this film, this is one story. This is Randy and Moses, but every person, every patient that you will meet has a story, just as rich and important as this one. So, just keeping that in mind, like your humility is about to make me cry. It's so hopeful, and just thank you so much. It's hopefully it's becoming more common, right? But it's not so common right now.
Huge shout out to Dr. Mauser and our entire quality of life and palliative care team. It did not exist just like 2 years ago, and in the form that it is now, it's exploded. And Dr. Mauser he and his one other colleague were holding down the fort for like a year, laying the groundwork for it to take the form that it's taking now. And it's really been transformational for the care that we're able to provide here at our children's hospital. Want to see if there's anybody in the audience here in person that has any questions. If not, we do have questions, additional questions in the chat. Let's see. I see one here. What has been the effect on your other children of having a brother with a disability, and what have you been able to teach them? What have they been able to teach their friends in school, and et cetera?
Yeah, I would say it that way. They have definitely taught me. I have not taught them. I will not take that credit. They teach me all the time. Even from when, Moses was young and I would go pick up my other child at a birthday party and I had Moses in his wheelchair and I was like, oh, I wonder if she's going to be like upset that her brother in a wheelchair is coming. She'd be like, Mo, bro, what's up? And like just so proud of him all the time, like so proud. And I think that continues. And I often tell the story, but recently I was driving with my oldest 13-year-old daughter and she will tell me how she feels all the time. There's no filter. And she out of nowhere was like, when I grow up, I want to have 2 girls and a disabled boy. And I was like, whoa, she was way serious. She's like, do you think they can make someone have Phelan-McDermid? Is that a thing? I'm like, oh, honey, but even the fact that that's how she feels right now was mind blowing because I still struggle a lot with my ableism and I don't know that she does. And that's beautiful because she's had Moses since she was 18 months old. And my youngest daughter has had Moses in her life, her whole life. And I think that's been beautiful. We'll take him into their bring in a favorite thing or person day. And they'll bring Moses in and explain to the kids, this is Moses, this is what he has. And I love that because they get to say it in their words to their peers, their 7-year-old peers. And it's beautiful. And I learn so much every time. And it's just awesome. They'll be like, hey, somebody's staring at Moses. We'll be out somewhere and I'll say, okay, what should we do? And then they'll tell me and we'll just do what they say. Like literally they are teaching me.
We have another one. What positive and negative experiences have you had with the medical profession? You've interacted with them from your time in the NICU and since then. And then what would you want them to know now?
Yeah. Thank you so much for this question. I just never thought I would have this moment because it's been so hard. And there have been certain doctors that stand out to me, look halos over them. You're like one of them. But just the fact that you exist is really moving. I'll tell you about 2 of them and maybe one that wasn't so good and why. But when he was in the NICU at the beginning, the neonates had 2-week rotations. And so I had many of them. And one just didn't have that bedside manner. And she knew something was wrong. And while I appreciated that transparency, I didn't appreciate the way. I think you need both. And so she just told me something was wrong with him in a very cold way. And that left me kind of reeling while I was already kind of falling. And then I was sort of caught by the next rotation neonatologist who ended up being the one on duty when the microarray came back and we found out what he had. And so she was the one tasked with sitting me down and telling me his diagnosis. And she didn't know what it was either. She had never heard of it before. There's only at the time 1,200 cases, now closer to 3,000. And she sat down and she was so vulnerable with what she knew and what she didn't know. And I appreciated that. And I didn't feel like she was going to save me or help me. I felt like she was going to be with me. And that was something I needed and didn't know I needed until it showed up in spades and it was beautiful. And she and I formed a really strong bond. And I felt like it was mutual and it was giving in both ways. There was one very recent within the past year when we were in the ICU with Moses last Thanksgiving. And he was, he had an awful illness and was intubated and the whole thing. He was in a coma for a while. And while he was coming off of all that heavy medication and we were finally able to leave the ICU and moved down to the floor, there was this doctor, and her name is Dr. Dull, and she specializes in complex transitions from the ICU to the floor. And I was at one of my lowest points. It was like 5 a.m, and I'm holding Moses in my lap, and my tears are falling onto him. He was in so much suffering because of his withdrawal from the medications. And she just came in, and it was dark, and she just sat with me, and she was like, "I'm going to help you." And she did. And she stayed with me, and she spent so much time on rounds. And so I think just the generosity of time it goes a long way. And taking that moment to just say, "I see you and I'm going to help you." And she did, and she knew what to do. And, the fact that she's specializing in these complex transitions is something, it's a gap that I think is needed. And she's filling that gap. And it meant the world to me. I'm like crying out of joy in a way because it was so powerful. So. More? Good. Did you know?
I've had so many good experiences where viewing. I've learned so much along the way from my colleagues. I've witnessed some pretty tough ones as well. I think, as much as we can strive to center empathy and compassion at all of our conversations, and lean into the fact that communicating is a procedural skill that can be taught, that can be learned. You don't just go through medical training and pop out as somebody that can deliver difficult news or discuss complex treatment pathways. It's something that you learn along your way. And if you don't do it with structure and procedure, then you don't learn it as well. And that's what I learned in my training. That's what I encourage for all of you, is to think about communication as your procedure every single time, and get some extra training in it. There are amazing resources, Vital Talk being one just example of one that has great resources, communication frameworks to treat as a procedure.
What are your next plans with the film and your discussions? Like, where you have funding from the NIH, where is Moses taking us?
Yeah, so thank you. This film, it has, I try to make films with my creative partner, Jen Rainin, who we make films that have a kind of an art life and then also some kind of impact life. So Holding Moses went through its art life. It was shortlisted for an Oscar. It was screened in a lot of film festivals. And then now it's up on the New Yorker. So that's kind of its art life and its like public facing life. And then now we're in year 2 of its impact life, and we want to expand more. This was kind of our proof of concept year with the NIHCM grant to take it around. We've taken it to 12 schools so far, 12 medical schools around the country, and are starting to, we want to understand how this could work and what kind of conversations were available. Now, I think what we would like to do is bring on a couple of different practitioners and do work with possibly Global Genes or an organization to then bring the conversation, which is, we think, so much richer in this kind of environment if we get to work with a practitioner as well and bring the film to more medical schools and also hospitals and other institutions.
Great. There's still some great comments and questions in the chat, but unfortunately, we're already over the time. I want to respect everyone's evenings. Thank you again so much for being here. Maybe I'll just give you one quick brief, if you have like a short, like very brief take-home message you want to send out to everybody.
I think I said it earlier, just, please feel free to share this film with everybody. And just remember that, each of your patients that you encounter, kind of all the people in your lives have really rich stories behind them. Yeah.
Thank you so much for having us. I would say, I don't know where you all are, if you're medical students, but if so, I would say just follow what you like, your passion, let there be a reason why you're doing what you do so that it keeps you going for a long time because it matters to you.
I'm going to say the plug is humble curiosity. And no matter what field of medicine you end up in, make sure you bring some of those primary palliative care communication skills with you.
Could I just add one more? Yeah, self-care, right? Like that's, I have a friend, Dr. Jessica Zitter, who some of you might know. She does a lot of palliative care, and just the stories of burnout are really intense. You're doing such incredibly beautiful and hard work every day, and staying connected with why you do it looks really important to me. So self-care.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, all of you, for being here. It looks like, hold on, we will drop the link into the chat to the New Yorker video, the same video that we just watched, but the link on the New Yorker website. And we'll also send that out in the post follow-up email to the registrants as well, to make sure that everybody can view it again at their leisure, and also share it with their friends and colleagues, and help to spread this great beautiful piece of art. And again, thank you for being here. Thank you to the SHCDI team. Gina is here, helped us to set up stuff. Devora, Jean, Pete, Julie, with your team, and everyone else, and everybody for being here, for your time this evening. Thank you again. Thank you, interpreters. And our car captioner as well.